Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Frederick, managing director of trading and derivatives at the Schwab Center, to discuss if the rally that we've seen in January is sustainable. We'll also take a look at some earnings that are coming up in the Nasdaq 100 over the next week or two. Randy, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks. And I think we need to consider just how much juice is left in this rally, if it's sustainable at all, because we're pretty close to what a lot of strategists are thinking at in terms of a target for the S&P.
Well, it depends on what your time frame is for that target. I think if you're saying, hey, we may hit, say, 4,200 or so by the end of Q1, that's realistic, but it's a little I think a little bit early and certainly difficult to try to forecast where the markets may be at year end. I think 4,100 is definitely a critical level on the S&P 500. But to me, that's just a critical level in order to sort of get past some resistance. We've already surpassed yesterday, in fact, this critical downtrend that began all the way back at the beginning of last year that has converged with the 200-day SMA that we broke through yesterday. But that's the fourth time that's happened. So we can't be comfortable that it might not fail again unless we can get a little further. And to me, if we get to 4,100, that's where I'd be able to, I think, breathe a little bit comfortably.
Right. And as we go into earnings this week, of course, a number of the Nasdaq 100 heavyweights, Microsoft after the close today. We know the market's been focused on the Fed. Now we can start to think about some fundamentals. We know there's a rate hike decision coming up soon, but really we have to revert back to fundamentals at some point. And I think it's going to be critical to see how companies report and then what their guidance is going forward.
Yeah, fundamentals always matter. Now, if you're a very, very short-term trader, technicals are important, but the longer your time horizon, the more important fundamentals become, the less important technicals become. And even if you are an active trader, I stress this regularly. You should only be actively trading with maybe 20% of your portfolio. The other 80% is still long-term focused. And again, that's where fundamentals matter. But you're right. This is a critical week for earnings, and specifically in the tech sector. As you mentioned, we've got Microsoft, Texas Instruments, Lam Research, Intel, and KLA. All of them are critical tech companies, all part of the Nasdaq 100 that we'll be announcing this week. They're important. The tech sector specifically is a group that has announced probably more layoffs than almost any other area of the market. That in and of itself sounds bad, but when you think about it, what they're essentially doing is admitting that perhaps they overbuilt, they overgrew, they hired too many people than they needed when the money was free. Now that money costs a little bit, they're going to get to a leaner, meaner position, which overall is going to be a net positive in the long run. So I think the bar for earnings this quarter has dropped sufficiently low. There is some upside potential here for some surprises.
Right, especially if they've already announced the bad news, right, that they're laying off. And it seems so counterintuitive. You would think, okay, layoffs are a bad thing that can impact the economy. There's less consumer spend, discretionary money out there. But I guess from an investor perspective, when you see leaner headcount, savings on wages, and all those other hard costs that come with having a workforce that is positive for these stocks.
Yeah, and in fact, many times, almost for any company, payroll is their biggest expense. And oftentimes when companies do announce layoffs, you will oftentimes see the stock move higher because, again, that affects the bottom line very directly, and it cuts costs. And if they can maintain output in whatever product or service they provide with fewer headcount, that's just goes right to the bottom line.
All right, Randy, we appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.